Hi, I'm Thomas Bowles, Prince William County Agricultural Extension Agent. Welcome to our video.
All right, everyone, we're just about at 11 o'clock. Good morning and welcome to our Wednesday weekly class. My name is Thomas Bowles. I am the ag agent here. Today's class is going to be on spring lawn care. It's actually, in a sense, two parts. This week we're doing spring lawn care and talking a little bit about weeds. And then next week we'll be talking about weeds in a little bit more depth. Our presenter this week is Natalie Walker. She's the environmental educator and our best lawns coordinator here in Prince William County. And she is going to talk all about spring lawn care. So Natalie, when you're ready, go ahead and start.
Alrighty. Can you guys see my screen okay?
Yes.
Alrighty. So like Thomas said, my name's Natalie Walker. I am the environmental educator, best lawns coordinator with Prince William County. And today we'll be talking about spring lawn care. You might hear me mention, or you will hear me mention Dr. Goatley. He's the extension turfgrass specialist at Virginia Tech. I'll be mentioning his name a couple times throughout the PowerPoint. So Virginia Cooperative Extension, it's a partnership between Virginia Tech and Virginia State University, and we're committed to providing the public with access to unbiased scientific information. The services that the Extension Office offers in Prince William County includes parenting education, financial education, nutrition education, 4-H youth development, and environmental natural resources. So if you have a plant, lawn, insect, or wildlife question, feel free to contact our Master Gardener Horticulture Helpline. And that email is mastergardener@pwcgov.org. You can also keep in touch through our YouTube page. If you type in VCE-Prince William, this video will be uploaded probably by the end of this week or early next week. And we have a ton of other great videos that are up there now. There's a teaching garden blog. We have an Instagram. If you have a Facebook, you can type in VC Prince William Master Gardeners and Teaching Garden VC Master Gardeners of Prince William County. We have a Twitter, a Pinterest, and the mgpw.org website is the Master Gardeners of Prince William website. So first we'll talk a little bit of backgrounds of lawns. So a lot of people wonder if lawns have any value, and they actually have environmental benefits if you have a healthy, dense, and well-managed turf grass as a ground cover. So a healthy, dense turf grass can help slow stormwater runoff and erosion. It disperses heat and cool surrounding areas. It has a fibrous root system and reduces dust and stabilizes soil. And it can reduce sediment transported into streams and rivers. So from the picture, you see the before and after. So with a healthy, dense stand of turf grass, it's helping with the erosion going into the drain. All right, so I just wrote down some maybe personal or community reasons for turf grass as a ground cover. Maybe you like the looks of the grass. Your HOA might require turf grass. It can be a mood booster. So I know seeing the first glimpse of green means that spring and summer is not too far away after a long and cold winter. And I like the smell of fresh cut grass, and it reminds me of summertime. You might want turf grass as a ground cover for safety. If you have kids or grandkids, maybe you have a play or swing set in the back. It's good for recreation sports. So if you have a lawn that's big enough to play soccer, football, and then if you have pets, which they can use as a play area in the bathroom. So in addition to environmental benefits of a turf grass as a ground cover, there are also environmental risks if the turf grass is not managed properly. So a lot of the time there's over application of N and P, which is nitrogen and phosphorus, which are key ingredients in some fertilizer. And when those are over applied, they can wash off suburban lawns either by rain or irrigation, and they can find their way into the streams and rivers that lead to the Chesapeake Bay. So once those get into the Chesapeake Bay, they can block sunlight and smother aquatic plants, which ultimately leads to an unhealthy environment for aquatic life. Highly managed lawns provide little to no floral resources to feed bees and other beneficial insects. There's carbon emissions from lawn equipment. And as you see in the picture on the right, that's actually a picture of my parents, their side field. I had my dad take the picture and send it to me. But I consider that a monoculture, which is the cultivation of a single crop in a given area. So not only do monocultures apply to turf, but they can apply to trees and shrubs too. And maintaining this lawn monoculture sets up a constant battle against nature's tendencies, which is really unnatural and makes it more susceptible to problems. And improper watering of lawns is a wasteful use of a limited natural resource. And I just commented how many people have seen sprinkler systems on when it's raining. I know a lot of, I've been around a lot of places and I've seen when it's raining and the sprinklers on, and it kind of confuses me. All right, so in addition to the environmental benefits and risks, there are reasons why you might not want a turf grass as a ground cover. Maybe it's the noise pollution. Maybe you're just tired of lawnmowers, trimmers, and leaf blowers, the noise they make. Maybe you just have a lot of lawn and you're ready to attract more pollinators by incorporating more biodiversity by planting native plants. If you have a steep slope, areas that aren't draining well, heavy shade, you might consider an alternative to turf grass if it's not working in your landscape. And maybe you just don't have the time or energy anymore to maintain your turf grass, such as the gentleman on the bottom right picture. So what we do in our lawns definitely impacts the Chesapeake Bay watershed. So the watershed is 64,000 square miles, and it spans 6 states in the District of Columbia. And as of 2011, there's nearly 3.8 million acres of turf grass that's been planted within the Chesapeake Bay watershed. It's probably increased since then, but that's the number I got out of my resources. But fortunately, there's actions being taken across these 6 states in the District of Columbia to reduce, like I mentioned before, nitrogen, phosphorus, and sediment to meet the clean water goals of the Bay. It's called TMDL, which is the pollution diet, and they're trying to achieve that by 2025. And there's also many things that we can do every day to protect our watershed. Like in this picture, we can clean up after our pet waste, don't litter. We want to keep fertilizer on the lawn instead of pervious surfaces like sidewalks, roads, streets. You want to use the correct amount of fertilizer at the correct time for your grass species. So if you are a resident of Prince William County, City of Manassas Park, and you have turf grass and you're looking to maintain it and keep it healthy, there is the Best Lawns program. And with this program, the client gets a site visit from a master gardener volunteer to take soil samples, measure, and evaluate the lawn. And then you'll receive a custom report on how much, what type, and when to fertilize and lime, if needed for the lime, pesticide recommendations, management options, and renovation options. So for one soil test, which is a composite soil test, that's $40 and $15 for each additional sample. So in addition to the Best Lawns in Prince William County, there are several other counties in Virginia that have a turf education program. Fairfax, Fauquier, Prince William, Stafford, Spotsylvania, Henrico, Chesterfield, Albemarle, and Loudoun. But with COVID, I don't know exactly if some of their programs are on hold or postponed. And on the right is a flyer that just has a little explanation of our Best Lawns program. And if you want this flyer, feel free to reach out to me. It's also on our mgpw.org website. And the contact information's at the bottom. And that's my phone number and the website for Best Lawns. So there are some challenges to growing a lawn in Virginia. So we'll walk through these, but Virginia is in a transition zone. Turfgrass is a non-native plant species in our area. Trees and turfgrass are competitors. Expectations about lawns, and turfgrass may not be the best choice depending on your landscape. Like I mentioned, steep slopes, if you have a lot of shade, if there's poor drainage. So Virginia is in a transition zone. So this means that we have hot summers and cold winters, and our climate can be hostile towards both cool season and warm season turf grasses. Cool season turf grasses, such as turf type tall fescue, they're adapted to temperate climates, while warm season turf grasses, such as zoysia grass, they're better adapted to subtropical climates. And you can see from both of these maps that Virginia's in the transition zone. So more north, it's cool season grasses, more south, it's warm season grasses. And we'll talk about cool season and warm season in a little bit. So what does this mean for growing turf grass in our area? So producing quality, pristine lawns in Virginia can be challenging. Like I said, because we do have hot summers, cold winters, and different levels of moisture. It's not favorable for either group of grasses, but fortunately with proper cultural practices, a healthy lawn has a better chance of being established and maintained. So the next challenge is turfgrass is a non-native plant species. So that requires more water, fertilizer, pesticides, and maintenance than native species. And remember that Northern Virginia was once dominated by forests. So it had tree canopy, understory trees and shrubs, ground layers with a mixture of forbs, ferns, and grasses, and occasionally more open meadows. So our soils are programmed for forests and not necessarily for lawns and gardens. So that's another challenge to keep in mind. All right, trees and turfgrass. So trees and turfgrass, they are competitors for water, sunlight, and nutrients. And one of the largest impacts that trees have on turf is shade. And just remember that turfgrass is just like any other plant and it needs light for photosynthesis. So even the more shade tolerant turf grasses will need sunlight to thrive. They can't just grow in like a totally dark shaded area. Some of the impacts that for turf that doesn't receive adequate light, they'll have thin blades, slow growth, and won't recover from foot traffic as well. So if you have areas that receive less than 6 hours of daily sun, an alternative ground cover is recommended. All right, another challenge with growing lawns, the expectations of lawns can be high and unrealistic, even using science-based recommendations. So you might ask yourself, does your home lawn have to look perfectly uniform, lush, green, and weed-free? I know right now there's a lot of powerful advertising from lawn care companies and lawn products claiming that you have to have the perfect green, weed-free lawn if you use their products. A lot of what we do is manage client expectations at the office. So grass is a high maintenance plant. and weeds are to be expected. So weeds can show up by seed dispersal, even in a healthy, well-maintained lawn. So billions of weed seeds can reside in the topsoil. They can blow in the breeze. They can actually be carried by stormwater and on the fur of animals. And they can also come from your neighbor's lawn. So kind of expecting that there will be weeds is something to keep in mind. Another challenge is turf grasses. They might not be the best choice depending on your landscape. So you might want to consider turf alternatives. So if you have steep slopes like the picture on the left, areas heavily shaded by trees, poorly draining areas like the photo on the right, turf grass is not the best choice. So some alternatives could be native ground covers, a permeable surface, maybe a vegetable garden that you've been thinking of growing, installing a rain barrel to catch the excess water so it doesn't cause your grass to be soggy and wet. Maybe you want to let your moss spread in an area that's shady instead of trying to grow turf grass. Incorporating white clover. The VCE-Prince YouTube page has really great videos, but we do have lawn alternative video on there, ground covers, and dealing with problem areas in your landscape that you can watch. And when I was doing some research, I noticed that times are changing, and so are perspectives about home landscapes. So what is the future of lawns? How much lawn is enough, and how much do you really need or want to maintain? Like I said, accept that there will be weeds. Not all insects in a lawn are harmful, and lawn alternatives are available if your lawn has become difficult or undesirable to maintain. So even with the challenges of growing turf grass in our area, you can follow these best management practices to help produce a healthy turf while also protecting water quality, the Chesapeake Bay, and its critters. So this is a chart that breaks down the management practices between cool season and warm season turf grasses, and we'll go over each section. So you want to determine what type, if you do have lawn, you want to determine what type of lawn you do have. You have cool season or warm season. So you may notice driving around that some yards, they're totally brown. In the winter, those are warm season turf grasses such as zoysia or Bermuda grass. And then if they're greenish in the winter, tall fescues, those are cool season grasses. So with that, you want to make sure you plant the right plant in the right place and choose grasses according to your lawn site conditions and your lifestyle. So for example, you're not going to plant a grass that is high maintenance if you don't want to maintain it. And you're not going to plant a turf grass that needs 8 hours of sun and plant it in full shade and expect that it'll grow. And turf grass care is about timing. So we want to work with nature, not against it. We want to remember that not all turf grasses are alike. So some have better shade tolerance, some have better foot traffic, drought tolerance, etc. And knowing what type of turf grass you have is imperative to properly managing your lawn and protecting the Chesapeake Bay. And remember that maintenance schedule differs from cool season turf grasses and warm season turf grasses. So we're going to talk about primary cool season turf grasses in our area. They prefer cooler temperatures and are adapted to the cooler portions of the United States. Common cool season turf grasses in our area include tall fescue, Kentucky bluegrass, fine leaf fescues, and perennial ryegrass. And dormant doesn't mean it's dead. So when cool season grasses go into their summer dormancy, it's actually a survival response to heat and drought, and it can show itself as an off-color yellowish brown. And it can recover in the fall with cooler temps. So if you see that with cool season grasses in the summer, that browning color, that doesn't mean it's dead, it's just dormant. All right, continuing with cool season turf grasses, just a little description of each. Tall fescue is the default turf in Virginia. It's all-purpose turf in mid-Atlantic. Kentucky bluegrass, only use it in a mix, and it's not recommended as the primary turf species in Northern Virginia. Fine fescues have the best shade tolerance of cool season grasses. And perennial ryegrass, it's not recommended as a permanent turf in Northern Virginia. It's used as a nurse crop with fescue and bluegrass. Nurse crops, if you're not sure, they assist with the establishment of a perennial crop. So pros and cons of cool season turf grasses. So they're green through much of the year. Most species are widely available as seed and sod. Some species require more fertilizer and maintenance, and they have varying degrees of shade tolerance. And the picture on the right is tall fescue. So there's a seasonal growth pattern with cool season turf grass. And as you can see on the right, there's a primary window, and this is when we want to do most of our management/maintenance for cool season turf grasses. This is when the shoot, root, and carbohydrates are all on the rise at the same time. There is a secondary window on the left, but we want to focus more of, again, doing our maintenance in that September, October, November timeframe. So cool season grasses, they like temperatures in the 60 to 75 degree range, and fall is the optimal time to fertilize, seed, and aerate. And like I said, this is when both shoot, root, and carbs are on the rise at this time. And Dr. Goatley, he says turf grass will respond to spring fertilization, that secondary window, but he says the greenest of lawns doesn't mean it's the healthiest. So if you do maintenance in that secondary window, fertilization, it'll promote shoot growth at the expense of root growth. And this is for both cool season and warm season. The secondary window is late winter to early spring. So again, if you have cool season grass, focus on doing your maintenance in the September, October, November timeframe. Next, we're going to talk about primary warm season turf grasses. So they're the opposite of cool season turf grasses. They prefer warmer temperatures and are best adapted to southern areas of the United States. Common warm season grasses in our area is zoysia grass, Bermuda grass, and nimblewill. And depending on the species, they'll usually go dormant in October, turning brown to straw colored in the winter. So that one picture I showed you, the brownish grass in the winter, that was warm season turf grass. And again, that doesn't mean it's dead, because it'll start to green up in late spring, typically around June 1. So if you're driving around now and you see that brown grass, it's just dormant, and it will green up in late spring. So to continue with primary warm season turf grasses, zoysia grass has the longest winter dormancy of the warm season grasses. Bermuda grass is considered a weed in cool season grasses. Same with nimblewill, it's considered a weed in cool season grass, but it's native. Some of the pros and cons with warm season turf grass: fewer disease problems, requires less water, can be managed for less fertilizer, dormant for much of the year, that's that browning color, few seeded varieties, and lower shade tolerance. And the picture on the right, that is Bermuda grass. So there's also a seasonal growth pattern for warm season turf grass, just like cool season. There's one big growth window in the summer to early fall. It's the opposite of cool season. So if you have warm season turf grass, this is when you want to do your management. This is when the shoot growth, root growth, and carbohydrates are all on the rise at the same time. And if your lawn looks like this in the winter, you have warm season turf grass. So the next management practice we want to follow is measuring the turf. So fertilizers and herbicides are applied at rates based on 1,000 square feet. And if you don't know the size of the turf, you can be over or under applying products. So if you're over applying, you can, with fertilizer and herbicides, you can be hurting the environment and wasting your money. If you're under applying, you may not be getting the job done. So I got this How to Measure Your Yard from University of Maryland Cooperative Extension. So you just take the total lot and then you subtract the house, deck, driveway, garden, walkway from the total lot. And then the remainder is what you would want to manage. So you take away all the impermeable surfaces. So when you apply only as much lime and fertilizer that it's necessary at the appropriate time, nutrient runoff into surface or groundwater is minimized, your money is saved, and the plant health is optimized. So measuring your turf is something that you definitely want to do to make sure you're doing putting the right amount of fertilizer on it. Soil testing. You want to soil test every 3 years for heavy soils or annually for very sandy soils. And you don't want to guess. You want to make sure you soil test. Dr. Goatley says to think of it as a physical for your lawn, and it provides science-based results to improve the health of your soil. And he also says there's no wrong time to soil test, but you don't want to soil test when the ground is frozen or too wet, and you don't want to take soil samples from where your pets use the restroom. You do want to soil test problem areas separately. Soil test every 3 years. Sandy soil every year because it can leach nutrients more easily. And you want to make sure that you treat the flower garden, veggie garden, and lawn differently when taking soil samples. As a homeowner, you do have the option to collect your own soil samples and mail them directly to Virginia Tech. It's $10 for routine testing for Virginia residents plus shipping costs. Soil kits can be requested from the Prince William County Cooperative Extension Office and can be mailed to you since our office is closed to the public unless you set up an appointment. If you're on this call and you live outside of Virginia, if you live in New Jersey, you can send your soil to Rutgers. If you live in Maryland, you can send your soil to Virginia Tech, but it's $16 for routine testing because it's out of state, or you can send to University of Delaware or Penn State. So how to collect your own soil samples. Before you start, you want to keep in mind that the reliability of the soil test can be no better than the sample you submit. So it's really important that you take samples correctly to accurately represent the soil in your landscape. So to collect samples, you can use a stainless steel or chrome-plated soil probe, which is the top left picture. You can use a hand garden trowel, shovel, or spade, but you don't want to use brass, bronze, or galvanized tools because they they'll contaminate samples with copper or zinc. And you want to try to get down to 4 inches, 3 inches minimum. How to collect your samples. You'll do 10 to 15 samples randomly across the lawn. Dr. Goatley says a half a pint can roughly equate to an acre. You'll want to mix samples into a clean plastic bucket. If the bucket has been used to hold fertilizer or other chemicals, make sure you wash and rinse it thoroughly before using it for your samples, and remove grass clippings and the roots. The final step for collecting and sending off your own soil, you put mixed samples into a white soil sample box, and you want enough to fill up the box to the black line. There's a black line on the outside of the box that says fill to here, and usually a cup's enough. You want to make sure to fill out the soil information sheet and the soil sample box, and you can mail soil information sheet, soil sample box, and check using the address on the bottom of the sheet to Virginia Tech. And once they process your soil sample, you will receive a one-page report. If you put your email on the sheet, they'll email you the report. If you don't have an email, if you put your address, they'll mail it to you. And they will let you know the pH, lime, it may or may not be needed, and fertilizer recommendations. So this applies to cool season and warm season turf grass, but you want to lime only if your current soil test indicates that it's needed. So lime isn't annual maintenance, and it can be done anytime the ground isn't frozen. Correcting the soil pH is the #1 way to improve soil. Soil pH affects the nutrient availability for the plant. Lime is used to raise soil pH. Turf grasses do not perform well in acidic soils, and most soils in Virginia are acidic. And again, lime according to your soil test results, and lime is not annual maintenance. And you can add lime anytime the ground is not frozen or snow covered. Pelletized lime is easier to apply and makes less mess than the powdered form. Compost applies to cool season and warm season turf. It can be done in the spring, summer, and or fall. You want to apply a 1/4 inch of compost over in the entire turf area. So this is the number, by adding organic matter, it's the #2 way to improve soil. It can improve soil structure and root growth. And you want to apply it over the entire turf area, but you should be able to see your grass after the compost application. So you don't want to bury the turf grass. All right, so for cool season, you want to avoid fertilizing in the spring. You want to wait for the September, October, November timeframe to do that. And for warm season, you do not want to begin fertilizing until after green up. And like I said before, cool season turf grass, it will respond to spring fertilization, but like Dr. Goatley said, the greenest lawn doesn't mean it's the healthiest. And fertilizing cool season turf grass in the spring can lead to disease in late spring and summer. And it promotes shoot growth at the expense of root growth for both cool and warm season. If you fertilize warm season grass when it's still dormant, that brown color, all it's going to do is feed your weeds. All right, so do we want to fertilize in the summer for cool season turf grass? No. For warm season turf grass, yes. June through August 15th. And fertilizing warm season grasses after August 15th isn't recommended. And back to cool season, you don't want to fertilize because ideally the cool season grass should be dormant by then. All right, so fertilizing the fall for cool season, yes, this is the time you do want to fertilize for cool season. That's September through early November. Warm season turf grass fertilization in the fall, no. So we want to follow that sun rule, which is September, October, November timeframe. For cool season, the annual total it depends on if it's in full sun or shade, but it can go from 1.5 to 2.5. Cool season grasses growing in heavily shaded areas require only 1/2 to 2/3 as much nitrogen as grasses growing in full sun. And excuse me, for warm season turf grass, we don't need a lot of fertilizer, so it's 1 to 1.5, which is on the lower end. So cool season turf grass and warm season turf grass pre-emergent. If you have thick, high cut turf, it shouldn't need it. Pre-emergent is it prevents germination of seeds before the weeds emerge, or more importantly, before they germinate. Post-emergent, we want to hand pull and practical and make sure to identify weeds, to identify the most effective herbicides and target applications based on when herbicides are most effective against target weeds. And post-emergence are applied to the foliage of weeds that have already germinated. So they're the opposite of pre-emergent. All right, insecticide. Grubs are a main turf insect problem. You want to check to ensure 10 plus grubs per square feet. Treatment is effective for late July, August with synthetic herbicides. So grubs are beetle larvae. They spend most of their life cycle deep in the soil, and June is when we want to scout. Late May, June is when they come up as mature grubs and spend most of July as adults. July eggs are laid and hatch. Late July, August is when we want to treat because they are small enough in the profile of the soil where it will affect them. And just something to keep in mind, don't assume you have grubs, so you want to check before you treat. Fungicide, they're not recommended for home lawns as they often do more harm to soil health than provide benefit for the turf. Polythium blight is the exception. It needs to be treated promptly, although it's rare in Virginia. Aeration. For cool season turf, aeration is best done in September. And for warm season turf, after green up in late spring, early summer, aeration can enhance infiltration of rainfall, improve soil health and microorganisms, allow seed, lime, and fertilizer to enter into soil. Don't worry about doing anything with the plugs. They'll eventually decompose. If you do, you can aerate cool season turf in the spring, but don't do it when the ground is wet or it'll rip it up. But like I said, cool season aeration is best left for September. Thatch buildup shouldn't reach excessive levels at low to moderate fertilization. This applies to cool and warm season turf grass. If you're not sure what thatch is, it's the intermingled layer of living and dead stems, leaves, and roots that exist between the soil. It tends to be broken up by aeration. And Dr. Goatley says a 1/2 inch less is good because it kind of acts like a blanket. It insulates and protects from foot traffic. But more than a 1/2 inch, it restricts water and chemical movements into the soil and can harbor pests. Seeding for cool season grass, September to early October. Warm season turf, seeded varieties aren't recommended because they're slow to establish from seed. And because of the time required for germination and root growth of seed, the area is exposed to erosion. You can get seed for Bermuda and Zoysia, but they can be expensive and tend not to be recommended varieties growing in our area. Warm season grasses are spreading grasses and they'll usually self-heal themselves. You can use plugs, which are 3 by 3 inch squares of sod, or sod to repair warm season bare spots in your yard. Sodding for cool season, it allows a little wider window for planting than seed, but sod planted before September will need more watering. For warm season turf, late spring, early summer is the time to sod warm season turf grass. However, warm season sod is hard to find locally. All right. So breaking the cycle of spring seeding is hard to do when grass seed products are all around us at the first sight of spring. However, sometimes it's necessary to spring seed, even though spring seeded turf grass often fails because of the heat and drought of summer. So you can spring seed if you have bare spots. You can seed the lawn, but expect that you'll have to do it again in the fall. And remember that crabgrass preventer will also prevent grass seed from germinating. Another option is to seed the lawn with white clover. White clover evolved with the grasses. It puts nitrogen in the soil. It's a nectar source for early pollinators, and it mixes well with turf, and it doesn't get very tall. So you can overseed with white clover at 3 to 4 ounces per 1,000 square feet, and you can still overseed with grass in the fall. And your next option is to lay sod. Sod has a much higher survival rate than spring seeded grasses, but it's also more expensive. All right. By definition, a weed is a plant that's in the wrong place, but expect that there will be weeds. Weed control, it's important to know what weeds you have, to know what products to use and what time to use that product to make it most effective. So if you have a weed and you need help with identification and specific chemical recommendations, please contact Master Gardener at pwcgov.org. We're going to go through some slides and ID some weeds. These weeds are not all inclusive, so I'm not going to go over every single weed that we have. And there is a weeds class next Wednesday, March 17th from 11 to 12 that if you're interested, you'll have to register for that. All right, so annual bluegrass, Poa annua. I haven't seen it, but I bet if I went to my parents' house this week, I'd probably see it in their lawn. It's one of the main cool season weed grasses. It has a light color, especially when it has seed heads. It does well on lawns that are cut short. It likes areas with low pH, compaction, poor drainage. It's a winter annual that will die out in the summer. It produces prolific number of seeds, so you may never be able to fully eradicate it from the lawn, but you can try and manage it. Crabgrass. It's one of the most common summer annual grassy weeds. They tend to have a purplish center, and they're best controlled by maintaining a thick, high turf. Okay. Usually makes its first appearance in spring when soil temperatures in the root zone reach the mid-50s. Goosegrass is a summer annual grassy weeds. It looks like a wagon wheel if you're looking at from the top. It's white in the center. It does appear a few weeks after crabgrass. Thick turf mowed high will usually shade out most goosegrasses. Foxtail, there's actually 3 in our area. They germinate after crabgrass. They're found more in disturbed sites rather than lawns. Again, thick turf mowed high can help shade it out. Bermuda grass, aka wiregrass, is a perennial grassy weed. This is the one that's considered a weed in cool season grasses. It is difficult to control, so key is early detection, and you want to get it while it's small so it captures less sunlight. Nimblewill is a native warm season grass. It's shade tolerant and forms dense mats. It's not as aggressive as Bermuda grass. And again, key is early detection. You can hand pull young stands when they're young. It's sometimes the best option for turf, such like if you have a shady site or where your kids or dogs like to play. It is difficult to get in seeded or vegetative forms. Plantain, there's actually broadleaf and buckthorn plantain. You want to make sure to keep your turf dense and hand pull young plants. Veronica speedwell. It's often found in dry areas with low soil fertility and has little purple flowers on it. You can hand pull it. Wild Virginia strawberry. There's actually an Indian mock strawberry too that you've probably seen. Wild Virginia strawberry has white flowers, and Indian mock strawberry has yellow flowers. And the seeds on the Indian mock, they're more spherical and like a little ball with like kind of spiky protrusions on them. This is hairy bittercress. That's probably going to pop up soon. Its seeds can germinate in 5 days and can produce seeds 5 weeks after germination. I thought this was pretty interesting. So a gentle touch or passing breeze can trigger the pods to explode and send the seeds flying as far as 3 feet from the mother plant. It's actually a strategy known as bollatry. They're shallow rooted and fairly easy to pull by hand. And I have a short little video of the hairy bittercress seed dispersal, if it'll play. All right. Common chickweed. It's one of the most common cool season weeds. It's a low spreading winter annual, and seeds can remain viable up to 10 years in the soil. Ground ivy, also known as creeping Charlie, can often be confused with wild violet. Ground ivy has rounded leaves. Wild violet, they're native and have wildlife value. They tend to have heart-shaped leaves, and violets prefer shady conditions. Henbit, it's a winter annual. It looks similar to dead nettle, and it's utilized as a food source by pollinators in early spring. This is dead nettle. It's a winter annual that looks similar to henbit. It has a reddish purple color on its upper leaves, and it's also utilized as a food source by pollinators in early spring. Wild garlic, I've definitely seen that. It's more persistent because it produces bulbits, which are often left in the soil when pulled. The way to tell the difference between wild garlic and wild onion, wild garlic has hollow leaves. So if you snap it, it's hollow inside. This is wild onion. It has a flatter leaf blade. Dandelion provides a valuable food source for early pollinators. They do have deep taproots and often have a milky sap. They are hard to control because of their prolific seed production and the ease at which their seeds disperse. But you can try hand pulling and getting the root. White clover provides a valuable food source for early pollinators. There's black medic, yellow wood sorrel. Wood sorrel can be mistaken for clover. Yellow wood sorrel is the most common wood sorrel found in our lawns. The flowers are the easiest way to tell all three apart. Spurge grows close to the ground. It does have a similar growth pattern as Lespedeza, and spurge has a milky sap. Common Lespedeza grows low to the ground. Hand pulling is an option, and it has a woody stem in late summer. Yellow nutsedge. There's also purple nutsedge. They produce small tubers referred to as nutlets, and you want to hand pull them when the plant has less than 5 leaves. All right. So this isn't really related to lawns, but while you're out and about this summer, spring in the lawns, I just want to say, just say no to mulch volcanoes, not just now, but in the springtime. They're actually the fastest way to kill a tree. Properly mulched trees expose the root flare at the base of the trunk. So you want to make sure the mulch is no more than 2 inches deep, providing needed air and water to the roots, and keep mulch at least 3 inches from the trunk. And we just missed National Invasive Species Awareness Week, which was February 22nd to the 26th. But I'm just going to go over 6 invasive plants that I see quite often in our area. Again, this list is not all inclusive. So there's the Bradford pear. Not only is it invasive, but they smell horrible. That's the picture on the top left. There's burning bush. In the middle picture, Nandine on the bottom left, also known as heavenly bamboo. So if you want to, you can educate your friends and neighbors to not buy non-native invasive plants. And the other 3, English ivy in the top left, which I see quite often, Japanese barberries in the middle, and Japanese honeysuckle is in the bottom left. So save the dates. We do have some upcoming Wednesday Zoom classes. The same time, 11 to 12, registration is required. If you visit the horticulture classes page, you can find the registration links. The 17th is weeds, March 24th is natives, 31st is birds. Then we're going to do container gardening, rain gardens, Audubon, and hydroponics. And if you missed a Zoom class, all the Zoom classes will be posted to the VCE-Prince YouTube page.
We don't have any questions in the chat box. If anybody has questions, feel free to either post them in the chat box or unmute your mic and ask them directly. Seeing none, I think we're close to time anyway. We'll thank you all for attending, and we will see you next time for more on weeds. Again, if you have questions, please email us at mastergardener@pwcgov.org. We'll see everybody next time. Thank you all.